I'm Veronica Dudo in Washington, D.C. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, high-stake talks. The U.S. delegation is on the way to Pakistan for talks with Iran. We're at the White House with the latest. Appeal for peace. Pope Leo XIV holds a vigil at St. Peter's this weekend. How you can pray with the Holy Father. Countdown to Splashdown. Artemis 2 returns to Earth this evening. Plus, big week ahead. We preview Pope Leo's upcoming trip to Africa. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on this Friday within the octave of Easter. Our top story tonight, President Donald Trump says it's because of him that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, adding very quickly, you'll see oil start flowing with or without the help of Iran. He also says the only reason they are alive today is to negotiate. His comments come as Vice President J.D. Vance heads across the globe to Pakistan to lead mediated talks with Iran. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
Veronica, ahead of his trip, Vice President J.D. Vance told reporters at Joint Base Andrews that President Donald Trump gave the VP and his negotiating team some pretty clear guidelines, and adding, we're going to see.
As Pakistan tightens security ahead of high-stakes talks between the United States and Iran, Vice President J.D. Vance says he's looking forward to the negotiation and thinks it'll be positive.
As the President of the United States said, if the Iranians are willing to negotiate in good faith, we're certainly willing to extend the open hand.
Just before flying off, Vice President Vance also told reporters,
if they're going to try to play us, then they're going to find that the negotiating team is not that receptive. So we're going to try to have a positive negotiation.
Ahead of the talks, President Donald Trump posting on Truth Social, Iran is doing a very poor job, dishonorable, some would say, of allowing oil to go through the Strait of Hormuz. That is not the agreement we have. In another post, he claims, there are reports that Iran is charging fees to tankers going through the Hormuz Strait. They better not be, and if they are, they better stop now. One Democratic lawmaker critical of the war says Iran is now asserting full control over the strait, using it as leverage over the world.
The Strait of Hormuz, there was no toll on the Strait of Hormuz. They had no control over the Strait of Hormuz except for the geographic boundaries there. Now we're in a worse position.
Also tonight, questions remain over what will happen to Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium at the heart of tensions. In addition, what happens to Iran's ability to launch future missile attacks and support armed proxies in the region. In Beirut, meanwhile, residents kept sifting through wreckage of their homes after Israeli strikes in its battle with Hezbollah. Talks between those two sides will take place starting next week at the State Department in Washington.
Tonight, President Trump travels to Charlottesville, Virginia for a MAGA meeting and dinner. And tomorrow he'll be in Miami for a UFC fight. On Sunday, he returns back here. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Joining us now is Andrew Harding, policy analyst for China and the Indo-Pacific at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, first, Vice President J.D. Vance is heading to Islamabad in Pakistan to take part in peace negotiations with Iran being facilitated by Pakistan. Now, how did Pakistan become so integral in these talks?
Well, good afternoon, Veronica. I think what's really important with Pakistan here is we have to think back to 2025. This is where President Trump played a key role in ending a skirmish between Pakistan and India, which resulted in fire exchange between the two nuclear powers in South Asia. So from there, Pakistan clearly appreciated the president's support. They encouraged him to be a Nobel Peace Prize nominee, clearly developing a very personal relationship in that regard. There's still some underlying issues in the broader U.S.-Pakistan relationship, but for this particular conflict between the U.S. and Iran, Pakistan has inserted itself as a key mediator that President Trump clearly trusts on this issue to at least provide this forum for talks.
Now, what will you be watching for? What do you expect will be the main points in these negotiations, and can they be resolved?
I think there are going to be a few key points. First will be on Iran's uranium. There's going to be some conversations about if Iran can say it has a right to enrich, while the United States will seek an agreement for it not to enrich and potentially trying to get uranium out of the country. We also know Hezbollah could be a conversation. Now, news is breaking about how Israel is going to be working potentially directly with Hezbollah, but Iran may have an interest in still having a say as to what that proxy group is willing to do. And finally, I think there will be an ongoing conversation about the Strait of Hormuz. If Iran has an interest in trying to assert more control, I don't think it's in the United States' interest to let Iran try to claim that entire strait for its own interests here. So I think those will be the conversations. Is it possible to see a breakthrough? Well, perhaps. Clearly, the president, the vice president think it's possible, the fact that the VP will be there, but we're currently on fragile and shaky ground. So I also think there's a very fair chance we don't see that work.
So on that point that the president and vice president think that there is something there, the world is watching these talks, and there's certainly pressure on all parties involved. What's at stake for Vice President Vance, and why is he taking the lead on the negotiations?
Well, I think what's important for the vice president here is it's showing just how important that President Trump, the White House, views these negotiations. Previously, it was just Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, but now we've elevated to see the vice president leading this work. So it shows that the president wants to place an increased importance on this negotiation and have the vice president visit Pakistan, of all places, for this. But I also think it shows that the president trusts the vice president. This is a very high-stakes negotiation, the most defining military engagement under President Trump's second administration. So to have the vice president there, to see it for himself, to be directly involved in those negotiations, will allow the president to get another high-profile perspective on if Iran is meaning what it says and will come to the table, or the vice president can determine the other fact that maybe Iran isn't doing that.
Well, big meeting, very high stakes. The whole world is watching. Andrew Harding, thank you so much.
Thank you.
While those talks are set to begin, there's also Iran-related action on the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue. Democrats in Congress want to stop President Trump from continuing the war, so they're planning votes next week to do just that. But will they succeed? Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has the latest on this effort.
Good evening, Veronica. This is a battle over who controls the authority to conduct the war, President Trump or Congress. Republicans in both the House and the Senate have voted down or blocked several attempts by Democrats to remove U.S. forces from Iran. Their latest push came yesterday during a pro forma session when they tried to vote on their own war powers resolution by unanimous consent, but it failed.
The House stays adjourned until 2:30 p.m. on Monday, April 13th, 2026.
A group of Democrats then headed down the House steps to protest.
The Constitution is very clear that the power to declare war rests with the Congress of the United States. Now, that's what we tried to do this morning. The pro forma speaker ignored us, which was a tragedy.
Upon our return, we will force another vote on the House floor around the war powers resolution that will compel the Trump administration to cease military hostilities immediately.
To do that, Democrats will need a handful of Republicans to jump on board. Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs challenged them to go further and wants President Trump removed from office.
They should realize that their president is putting us in harm's way, is making us less safe, and they should also be demanding impeachment.
Over in the Senate, Democrats also plan to bring up a war powers resolution.
Congress must reassert its authority, especially at this dangerous moment. No president, Democrat or Republican, should take this country to war alone.
Most Republicans say President Trump is well within his rights.
They've been at war with us for 47 years. They've killed Americans, they've killed Israelis, they've killed throughout the Middle East our Sunni Arab allies like Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia. They were bad guys.
I understand the president's position. Iran, axis of terror. I mean, obviously, we need to address that. We need to finish a job.
The wild card here is Republican support for President Trump that could change if the war passes the 60-day mark, which comes at the end of the month. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Pope Leo XIV is holding a prayer vigil for peace tomorrow night in the Vatican. The evening will be guided by meditations from early church fathers, including St. Augustine, and will see faithful from different continents light candles with the fire from the lamp of peace from Assisi. EWTN Vatican journalist Benedict Sedegren has more.
A sign of deep hope is how Pope Leo described the news of the ceasefire that began this week in the Middle East. Following the announcement, the Holy Father also invited all faithful to join him in prayer. Speaking at the end of Wednesday's general audience, the Pope reminded all that a vigil for peace will be celebrated in St. Peter's Basilica on Saturday.
I urge everyone to accompany this time of delicate diplomatic work with prayer, in the hope that a willingness to engage in dialogue may become the means to resolve other situations of conflict around the world. I renew my invitation to all to join me in the prayer vigil for peace.
The vigil will begin at 6 p.m. Rome time, noon Eastern time, and will be presided over by the Holy Father himself. Everyone, be it in person or following from home, is invited to join. The Pope first issued the invitation on Easter Sunday in his Urbi et Orbi message as the conflict continued to escalate. He emphasized that the power with which Christ rose from the dead is entirely non-violent and based on a love which creates and generates, forgives and redeems.
In the light of Easter, let us allow ourselves to be amazed by Christ. Let us allow our hearts to be transformed by his immense love for us. Let those who have weapons lay them down. Let those who have the power to unleash wars choose peace, not a peace imposed by force, but through dialogue, not with the desire to dominate others, but to encounter them.
Throughout Holy Week and Easter, Pope Leo has continued to appeal for peace. Addressing journalists in Castel Gandolfo, the papal summer residence, on Tuesday night, Pope Leo renewed that call and stressed the need for dialogue to pursue peaceful solutions.
Once again, what I said in the Urbi et Orbi message on Sunday, asking all people of goodwill to search always for peace and not violence, to reject war, especially a war which many people have said is an unjust war, which is continuing to escalate and which is not resolving anything.
Almost a year on from his election, one thing is clear. Pope Leo is not letting up in calling for the creation of a new world of peace and unity. In Rome, Benedict Sedegren for EWTN News Nightly.
If you would like to pray with the Pope, EWTN will be streaming the vigil on our YouTube page, and that will be at 12 noon Eastern Time on Saturday. As part of their synodal meetings in Rome to elect a new patriarch, the bishops of the Chaldean Catholic Church met with Pope Leo today. In a private audience at the Apostolic Palace, Pope Leo urged the electors to choose a leader living according to the heart of Christ, a father in faith for a suffering people. The Holy Father's mandate is clear. The new patriarch must be a tireless worker for peace, standing firmly against the blasphemy of war and the shedding of innocent blood. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has declared a ceasefire in Ukraine over Orthodox Easter. It is set to start from 4 p.m. Saturday until the end of Sunday. Earlier this month, I spoke with the Bishop of Kiev-Zhytomyr Diocese in Ukraine, Vitaly Kravitsky, about what a pause in fighting could mean for Ukrainians.
Of course, any ceasefire could become a path to peace. The main thing that this is the path to a just peace. We hope that Christians will have an opportunity to take part in the Easter holidays without war, both on one side and the other side of the border. However, we know that a short truce is not really the end of the war. God willing, we will taste this peace, each on their own side.
We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly's stellar return. After a journey through the stars, the Artemis expedition returns home tonight and experience a timeless journey of faith at the People of Hope Museum, celebrating our rich spiritual legacy. After historic 10-day journey around the moon, the Artemis 2 mission is coming to a close tonight. The Orion capsule is scheduled to splash down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego at approximately 8:07 p.m. Eastern. The craft will re-enter the atmosphere at incredible speeds and will deploy parachutes to achieve a safe 17 miles per hour speed ahead of its recovery by the USS John P. Murtha.
Here to help us understand the physics of this homecoming is J. Christopher Clemens, Professor of Physics and Astronomy at UNC Chapel Hill. Thanks so much for being here. Now, the Orion capsule, named Integrity, is hurtling towards Earth at 24,000 miles per hour. Given your expertise, how critical was this specific heat shield test before we commit to a crewed lunar landing in 2028?
Yes, thank you for the question. This is not the first test. So the first test was unmanned in Artemis 1, and you're absolutely right. This is probably the most dangerous part of the mission. Imagine a meteor coming back through the atmosphere to Earth. That's the speed at which this spacecraft is moving. So especially important and critical to make sure everything goes well. The first test did show some problems, so there's a little bit of anticipation of this part, and I will imagine a little bit of trepidation on the part of the astronauts.
Absolutely. Now, as we move from lunar flybys to actual moon landings, how does the Artemis mission bridge the gap between human exploration and the kind of deep space observation that you do every day?
Yes, well, getting above the Earth's atmosphere for astronomy is really important. And of course, we have robotic telescopes like the James Webb, but there's nothing quite like having a human presence. And a human presence on the moon is not only a platform to launch deeper into space and maybe explore Mars and asteroids, it's also a place where you can observe the universe without the intervening atmosphere. So it's going to be a tremendous opportunity going forward for astronomers.
And it's one that's been reinvigorated recently. And of course, now with social media, a lot of people have been watching. How does establishing a permanent human presence on the moon, the goal of these Artemis missions, change the game for astronomers and the types of telescopes we can build in the future?
Yeah, I think this is what we thought we were going to do when I was a kid and Apollo was launched, that we would have a permanent presence on the moon. We would live there and do work. I think there's a lot of advantages, again, the atmosphere, but also on the far side of the moon and in parts of the moon and craters, you're blocked from the radio interference of the Earth. So if you're going into the radio spectrum to listen to what's out there, much quieter if you can use the moon as a base. So I think everyone is really excited, not just about that part, of course. The space exploration potential when you're launching from the moon is just much, much bigger than having to leave the Earth each time.
Well, it seems buckle up, get ready. We're going to keep moving with this story and see what else can come out of it, especially from NASA. J. Christopher Clemens, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, Hope in Action, an interactive exhibit shares powerful stories of service and need. Plus, learn more about Pope Leo's upcoming trip to Africa. This Sunday, the second Sunday of Easter, the Church will celebrate Divine Mercy Sunday. Last year, following the death of Pope Francis, Cardinal Pietro Parolin celebrated the feast, which was established by Pope St. John Paul II in 2000. The day is a reminder that God's mercy is infinite for anyone who goes to confession, prays for the Holy Father's intentions, and receives Holy Communion on Sunday. It is an opportunity to receive a plenary indulgence, the removal of the temporal punishment due to forgiven sin. On Monday, Pope Leo embarks on an 11-day trip to Africa. His decision to travel to the continent highlights Africa's growing importance to the Church, where it's now home to about 20% of the world's Catholics. Pope Leo XIV has a packed schedule. He will visit 11 African cities, deliver 8 public speeches, and celebrate 8 masses. The trip begins on Monday, April 13th in Algeria. It will be the first time a pope visits the country whose population is mostly Muslim and Christians are a small minority. In a gesture aimed at strengthening the dialogue between the two groups, the Holy Father will
visit the Great Mosque of Algiers, one of the largest mosques in the world. On April 14th, the Pope will take a flight to the northeastern port city of Annaba. Near the ancient city of Hippo Regius, it was the home of St. Augustine. The Holy Father is the first Augustinian Pope who previously served as Prior General of the Order of St. Augustine for 12 years. The following day, Pope Leo heads to Cameroon for a 3-day visit. There, he is scheduled to travel to Bamenda, where he will hold a meeting for peace with the local community at St. Joseph's Cathedral and celebrate Mass at Bamenda International Airport. The visit to Bamenda carries strong symbolic significance given the region's experience of political and social tensions in recent years. The third leg of his tour brings him to Angola on April 18th. Previously visited by Pope Benedict XVI, it is a Portuguese-speaking nation with a Catholic majority. One of the highlights will be when Pope Leo prays the Rosary at the sanctuary of Our Lady of Maxima. It is one of the most important pilgrimage destinations in the country and a symbol of Catholic faith and pastoral care for the whole community. The final stop is Equatorial Guinea, where 90% of the population is Catholic. It is the only country in Africa where Spanish is the primary official language. Pope Leo's trip will be only the second papal visit in the country's history. The first took place on February 18, 1982, when Pope St. John Paul II visited Equatorial Guinea. One of the features of the visit will take place when the Pope goes to the monument dedicated to the victims of the Bata explosions, in which around 100 people died and about 500 were injured. Pope Leo XIV is the first pontiff in modern history with first-hand knowledge of Africa. Unlike his predecessors, he had already been to Eastern, Southern, Northern, and Central Africa in person before his May 8, 2025 election.
A new interactive exhibit is touring the country. It features stories of Christian service and highlights the needs of the less fortunate. I recently had the chance to speak with Catholic Charities about their mobile People of Hope Museum. Joining me now to tell us more about the museum is Kevin Brennan, Vice President for Communications at Catholic Charities USA. Thank you so much for coming on. First, can you tell us how this museum got its start?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, Veronica. Really, the museum got its start. The Lilly Endowment invited Catholic Charities USA to apply for a grant through its Christian Storytelling Initiative. And we kind of put our heads together here of, what story would we like to tell? And ultimately, it was the story of the people, the men and women of the Catholic Charities Network, staff and volunteers, and the profound and merciful service work that they perform day in and day out, but to tell the story through their perspective, which is a bit of a change from how we would normally do it, to show the rest of us around the country the profound impact that this service has, not only on the one being served, but on the person doing the service.
What are some of the unique features of the exhibit, and what are people saying to you once they see it?
Sure. So the museum has a number of components. The cornerstone really are these stories that I referred to, real stories of real human beings in a moment in time when they helped someone else who was going through the most difficult, moment in their year or maybe even their life, and how that moment impacted both of them. So those are video stories that you can watch inside the museum. There's also a poverty simulator where you assume a persona, let's say parents with a disabled child who are living in poverty, and you have to go through the daily and weekly decisions that those folks make, people who are living on the margins, and experience the types of decisions they make, and you kind of grow in your understanding and empathy for people living in poverty through the simulation. There is a learning library with excerpts from books on service and belonging and Christian service from authors like Arthur Brooks and Oprah Winfrey and Seth Kaplan and Matthew Desmond. Of course, we also hope the museum inspires people to act. And so there are ways in which you can sign up to volunteer for your local Catholic Charities agency wherever you are across the country.
It's very informational and also interactive, and of course the hope is for people to want to get involved. Where is it heading next?
Really, we're going to be all over the country for the next 2.5 years. You can visit peopleofhope.us to learn more about the museum. You can sign up for alerts to learn about when the museum will be near you, and you can browse the whole tour schedule. We've got the schedule built out for the rest of 2026, and then soon we'll be updating it with dates for 2027 as well.
Fantastic. Kevin Brennan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
This Easter, record numbers of individuals entered the Catholic Church, including many young people. EWTN News In Depth spoke with author and Harvard professor Arthur Brooks on why we're seeing this conversion boom.
This sense of meaninglessness is characteristic of why people are feeling depression, anxiety, loneliness, addiction, etc., and people are starting to fight back. They're starting to recognize that the little friend in their pocket, the supercomputer that's their smartphone, is not doing them any favors because it's mediating their relationship with other people, and they want real life.
To hear more of what Arthur Brooks had to say, you can catch EWTN News In Depth at 8 p.m. Eastern tonight. We thank you for watching. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Veronica Dudo. Good night and God bless.